we are actually so excited to welcome Her Highness Princess Noura bint Turki Al Saud. She is a visionary Saudi leader and founding partner at AEON Collective, a cross-disciplinary endowment championing sustainability, equity, and inclusive development. And I actually had the pleasure to visit her there, visit Her Highness there. It's a really amazing place, and actually the place itself reflects the mission in its design. It's really amazing. With nearly 2 decades of experience shaping the dialogue on energy, climate policy, and sustainable growth, Her Highness has been a leading voice in advancing climate-aligned energy strategies and the development of the circular carbon economy in the kingdom. And you know what's really important to underscore here, Her Highness has worked in this field before it became a trend. So you could see the passion about this field. Through her leadership at AEON Strategy and AEON Collective, she bridges science and policy to promote innovative, environmentally conscious approaches to national and global development. Her Highness holds a master's degree in international affairs from Columbia University's School of International and Public Affairs, and continues to serve on several distinguished boards and initiatives dedicated to advancing sustainability and knowledge-driven policy. Without further ado, welcome. This presentation will be moderated by Rachel Ziemba. Rachel Ziemba, I've been following her work since I was a student, long time ago, and we always admired her work. I never told her that. This is the first time we're saying this. But she's one of the foremost experts when it comes to economic assessment, risk assessment, energy issues, sanction issues. I mean, you name it. She's an excellent political economist. We're very pleased to have her at the forum as a non-resident fellow. She's also at the Center of New American Policy as an adjunct, and teaches at my alma mater, NYU. And actually, when I was at NYU, I followed your work. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Rachel and Her Highness.
Fantastic. Thank you, Danya. That's very kind. And you know, I'm honored to be speaking at this event. I'm honored to be having this conversation with Princess Noura, and I guess we'll have a conversation up here. Can you hear me? Sorry about that. Let me figure that.
I'm not here.
At the top. Apparently it was not. Sorry about that. Thank you. Now, okay, I can now hear that I'm properly mic'd. So apologies to those of you in the room and those of you online who couldn't hear before. Dr. Thafer has sort of introduced much of Princess Noura's background and her role at AEON Collective. She also spent time at the King Faisal Center for Research in Islamic Studies, where she headed the Energy Studies Unit, and is currently involved in CAU's Circular Carbon Initiative. I'm sure we'll come back to circular economies. And plays a role at the EIA's Energy Efficiency Industry Advisory Board. So we're going to have a conversation up here. I'll ask Princess Noura a few questions, but there will be, we hope, time for a few questions. So give some, give some thought to those, we'll take it from there. So just to kick off, and we were having a little chat in the break about the policy environment, both here in the United States and globally, and as well as in the Gulf. So I'm very interested in, from your role at AEON Strategy, how do you see Gulf states in general, and maybe Saudi Arabia in particular, leveraging circular carbon frameworks, circular economy? How is this a part of balancing the trade-offs for carbon goals and general industrial policy? Mm-hmm. We talked in the last panel about how important adding jobs, adding growth, quality growth is. Where do these sort of investments fit in?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you very much, Dr. Dania, for the invitation. It's such a pleasure to be here with you today, and such a pleasure to meet you, Rachel. Maybe to contextualize your question a bit more, it's important to go back and see what the context was like in the kingdom. What was the economic dynamic? What was the political economy, or the state of the political economy? And I think His Excellency, the Minister from Oman, spoke about that. Are the Gulf countries dependent on a natural resource, single source, whether it's oil or gas? And in the context of the kingdom, we're no different than any of these on the other Gulf countries. The difference is maybe the population dynamics, the political system, and the uniqueness of Saudi Arabia with its size and its population.
Sure.
And to that end, we could see that since the 70s, there have been multiple development plans, 5-year development plans, each and every one of them focused on diversifying away from this resources. So it's not something that's novel or new. There was always this realization that we cannot be held hostage to the fluctuations in energy prices. However, given that there was a lot of revenues coming in and it was a very comfortable situation, we kind of reverted back to that. There was a bit of efforts here and there to diversify, but the focus still remained on the single natural source that we had. Fast forward to 2015, there was a change in leadership, but at the same time, there was the shock that happened with the oil prices of 2014. And I think what was different about what happened in 2014 versus the earlier years from the 80s and 70s and all the different oil shocks there, is that with the new leadership, with the realization that our population has been changing, and it reached a point that it made a big 70% of our population was a young population, and there was a realization that we needed to do something, and we needed to do something large and big. And it's not about having ad hoc projects here and there. It was really a whole of a society, a whole of government. We had to flip our economy over on its head. And we had, thankfully, a young, dynamic leadership that pushed through with Vision 2030. I'm sure everyone here knows about Vision 2030 already. And I think that was really the point where everything started to transform. Now, I'll get back to that later and I can emphasize a bit more. But the reason I mentioned this, and coming back to the circularity and the kingdom's efforts in more sustainable energy practices and looking at the environment as a core pillar of our economic development and our social development plans, is because of what happened in 2016 with Vision 2030. Prior to that, our focus was on maintaining our energy primacy in oil and protecting that resource. When it came to sustainability, environmental sustainability in particular, when it came to the climate challenge, we were more on the reactive side, and we were kind of taking it as it goes, rightfully so, protecting our resource and all of that. Now, come Vision 2030, everything started to change. We identified through the multiple research efforts, economic analysis and studies, the importance of the environment, the importance of building resilient structures, the importance of looking into the future about, what does climate change mean? How will this impact our region? How will this impact the country? But also looking at how do you preserve the ecosystem in the kingdom, because that is the big selling point for the focus on alternative income for the country, which includes tourism. Like nature tourism is a big factor, protecting our culture, our heritage. And a big part of our culture and heritage is the natural environment. People think Saudi is a desert, but in fact it is a very diverse ecosystem. If you go all parts of the kingdom, you go north, south, and you have the Red Sea. So we have a very rich natural ecosystem there. And so I think this created the right enabling environment for our institutions to think beyond the traditional way of protecting a natural resource and thinking, okay, how can we be proactive? We see that the world is changing and evolving when it comes to energy policy, when it comes to climate policy, but more importantly, we're also seeing the new developments that are happening, and it's not purely, all of the different parts kind of came together at the right time. And it was also at the time of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So even Vision 2030 happened in alignment with the Sustainable Development Goals, taking in the Sustainable Development Goals, localizing it to the national ecosystem, and what does it mean for the different regions of the country? How can you embed it in there? So when we talk about climate, when we talk about the circular economy, it's not about just looking at the energy sector or the sustainability of the energy sector in vacuum. It's really, how do you develop and how do we plan for an integrated energy system that is going to be, spreading its veins or going into every aspect of the Saudi economy, into every aspect of the Saudi social structure and social system. And I think that was the fundamental difference in why the kingdom, and also I think you can say something similar about the other Gulf countries, and how did the circular carbon economy come into play? How are circularity practices becoming, and why are they becoming more and more important? It's because of this. It's because of this realization and the foresight of our leadership to actually make this transformation, which was a daunting task. It's not easy, and we've seen how challenging they were, and a lot of people had doubts and questions, and we've seen it all over the place. But what if? Will this happen? Will it not? Thankfully, we are seeing this happen today. And so from that, as things evolved, as Vision 2030 was solidified, and institutions started to look internally and see how they can align with the targets and the pillars and the goals. It's about a thriving society, a vibrant society, a thriving economy, and you can't have a thriving economy without a vibrant society, and vice versa, right? So it's really interlinked to one another. And so this is where innovative thinking came about. And with the appointment of Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman, His Royal Highness, in 2019, he first announced the concept of the circular carbon economy as it relates to our energy systems and energy sectors. So how can we be proactive? How can we be a leader in this challenge of addressing climate change, but at the same time maintaining and ensuring energy security, energy affordability, and energy resilience, and thinking about it pragmatically.
On that point, are there any specific cross-disciplinary projects or other things like that that you would point to as being either particular turning points or things you're particularly proud of, or any signposts that you would have people outside of the region watch for in the coming years?
I think there are multiple spaces or areas you can focus on the technologies. And to me, one thing that I was really excited about in the early 2012, 2016 was direct air capture. More broadly CCUS, but then direct capture as a part of carbon utilization and managing emissions. And I think there, under the circular carbon economy, it kind of opened the doors for and pushed some of our national champions and the wider ecosystems to really think about this very seriously, and we've seen the establishment of the CCUS hub in Jubail. It's a subsidiary of Aramco to really capture the CO2, whether it's in point source or using direct air capture plants and injecting it. And that's an innovative, one of the most difficult and challenging areas when it comes to carbon management, just because of the costs. I think when it comes to energy efficiency, that's something that we've seen, again, spearheaded by His Royal Highness Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman since the early 2010s to 2012s, even before Vision 2030. He was really thinking about, okay, how can we enhance our energy efficiency because of the way the country was using up its energy and its natural resources. And I think this has two effects, right? One, it's the impact on the natural resource itself and maintaining it and enhancing its longevity. But on the other side, it was also a way to bring in the population, get them more involved into the local economy, into what goes into this, into what the impacts on our environment. So there were the price issue, right? And with the price reforms that happened, that created a lot of awareness. At first, it created like a sense of like a foreign environment, like why are things changing for us? But then people became more and more aware with all of the different programs in terms of how do they support them with the incentive programs to enhance energy efficiency, to purchase more energy efficient products and all of that. The population became more engaged and more aware around the challenges that go into and the government face in terms of maintaining a stable economy. So I think it was a turning point for Saudi society and how they are more engaged with policy making, or at least understanding of how policy changes. And for me, I think this is something that's really important. The other would be on the agricultural side, right?
Okay.
Because agriculture relies on liquid fuels. A lot of our small farmers rely on diesel just to power their generations. And so there are a lot of programs
and the fertilizer needs.
All of that. So there are a lot of programs between the government to support them, and working, very closely with the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Environment. So there are a lot of cross-institution collaboration, further strengthened by the wider ecosystem that enforced, integrated governance within the kingdom. So I think these are things that are really interesting to me, seeing how things kind of blend into each other and how each ministry is supporting the other. And of course, it goes without saying the integration of the energy sector into the mining and industrial sector. This is something that's really important. We were just talking about this a while ago, about the needs for energy to power data centers, energy for industrial processes and industrial
the electric vehicle industry, the kingdom.
All of the above, right? And then you get into the challenges of, where do we source? How do we, source our minerals from? How much can we produce in Saudi? How much do we use in the kingdom versus how much do we import? How do you create strategic relationships with other producers and ensure that there's a resilient value chain there? Because again, I think the challenge in the future is not about energy security in terms of a natural resource, it's about the security of electrical systems. And the security of electrical systems are very much reliant on, if we talk about it from the original source, how do you get the right resources? How do you get a hand of the minerals there, and how do you go through the value chain, which would take on average 14 years to develop. So I think there is really where a lot of innovation is happening between the Ministry of Energy and the Ministry of Industry and Natural Resources, enhancing efficiency, using technologies to enhance operational efficiency, enhancing factories, current factories, and new and upcoming factories. How do you equip them to become more to absorb the changes in technology, because technology is evolving. So how do you develop them in a way where they're built at the highest standard, but then you can always integrate AI and new technologies as they become available to enhance this efficiency, whether it's operational efficiency, uses of energy, and etc.
You mentioned the collaboration across ministries and the like. And the need to communicate well to the population, also bring in businesses, right? And I know one of the tensions in the kingdom is in part wanting to do things fast. Sometimes then the incentive is to utilize and develop through portfolio companies, and there's a lot of positives and negatives. But are there any either sandboxes or innovation hubs or other sort of places that you feel are sort of good lessons learned for private or quasi-private sector sort of involvement here?
I mean, I think all of the big developments in the kingdom, the giga projects, have their own needs and their demands. So through the creation of these big giga projects, that's creating the demand to really bring in, ventures, to bring in small companies, tech companies to invest. But when you're looking at the bigger systems, the bigger projects, you really need government to de-risk that, and then bring in the private sector to kind of play the role that they're supposed to play. And as they evolve, and as they mature, they will then take up a bigger part of that. But initially, in order to prove a concept and to prove that, and to understand what the enabler environment is, it's one thing to have it on paper and say, oh, I need this and this and this, and these are the right policies. It's another thing to test them and put them on the ground and then start figuring out and adjusting the policies to be able to be fit for purpose. And I see the enabling environment in the kingdom evolving, and the way I see it, and the way it should be, is policies should be catalytic. They shouldn't be there just stagnant. I'm going to put this policy for the next 10 years and then let people figure it out, right? It's there. They, stakeholders sit with government entities, semi-government entities, and they try to find ways where you can really enhance impact. And I think that's where, as you said, we want to see things happen fast. But so you kind of have to play around and see where government has to come in, where a government-backed company has to come in, and then where can you crowd in innovation from the entrepreneurs.
Sure, and it's a balancing act, right? Because you can't, you need enough signals to, whether it's publicly owned companies or privately owned companies, to sort of make those long-term investments, but then realize where are the bottlenecks, right? Where are the things that either need to be de-risked or the things that are sort of blockages. Now, we've talked a lot about
and they're all creating demand, by the way.
Sure.
Like you see it within the Ministry of Energy, they've got a sector on innovation and AI, and you see a lot of venture firms coming in, supporting them. So these institutions, yes, they are government, but they in themselves are creating demand for the private sector to come and thrive, whether they're local entrepreneurs or they're international ventures and firms that are coming in to
I know we're coming to the end of our time, and you also have a train to catch. Are there any parting thoughts you'd like to sort of leave us with? Any calls to action, any things that you would like, either in partnerships with sort of the U.S. or the region? I know that's about 5 questions, so don't need to answer all of them, but gives you optionality about what to talk about.
Honestly, I mean, I've been working in the space as a private citizen. I've never worked in government. I work a lot with government and government entities and have tried to push for certain policies when it comes to sustainability, not just environmental, but really looking at economic and social justice and sustainability as the main driver of the work that we do. And I'm really proud to say, that I'm proud of the changes that we're seeing in our country, and it's really a game changer. And I see that, innovation and change will happen there because we look at the long term, and we're happy to adjust and change and, manipulate things as we see fit to serve a purpose and reach our goals and our targets. And I'm really seeing the opportunities there. And I know that there are a lot of conversations happening, about, okay, what is the enabling environment? We are lacking X, Y, and Z. Investors needs 1, 2, and 3 to come in and be more incentivized. Well, that's great. Come in, talk to us. And I think what's great about whether it's government entities or local institutions, everyone's open to these conversations, and they're very receptive to these conversations. So. I think it's a really ripe time for collaboration, whether it's Saudi with Western countries, Europe, the US. We have a strategic relationship with the US, and I see this being strengthened even with the economic incentives we have, but also with the East. And we're diversifying and looking at opportunities everywhere.
Fantastic. I think that's a great way to end our conversation. Thank you so much for your time, for sharing your insights. I'm sorry there wasn't time for audience questions, but hopefully there will be time for further engagement on all of these critical issues. I will, for the audience, we will be transitioning very quickly to the next panel, but I will hand back to Dr. Danya, or maybe to Dr. Dave, I'm not sure who, for the next phase.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Highness, I just have a small gift of appreciation for you taking time out of your very busy schedule to come and speak with us and tell us. It's a pleasure. Yeah, it's our honor, actually.